Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Aaron's cell phone buzzed on the table, and Kyle's name appeared on the screen. It's weird, Kyle usually texts first. Aaron picked up the phone, and from the moment Kyle opened his mouth, he knew something was wrong. Kyle's voice was unsteady, like he was hesitating. Aaron, man, wherever you are right now, sit down first. Aaron is already sitting in his desk chair with a frown on his face. What's going on? He asked, gripping the phone tightly. Kyle took a deep breath. It's about Emma. She's at a club you won't like to hear about. Aaron's stomach lurched. Club? What is she doing? Kyle hesitated. Dance. Aaron almost laughed. Dancing? Then Kyle's voice lowered and became more serious. It's more like a public makeout session, bro. She was cuddled up with some guy, and his hands were touching her everywhere, right in front of a big crowd. And Paul was cheering them on from the sidelines. For a moment, Aaron felt chills all over his body. Paul, he repeated, his brain struggling to keep up with the situation. Yes, and Linda. Some of our other friends were there, and watching it was like watching a show. I didn't want to call, but I thought you should know. Aaron stared blankly at his desk, his heartbeat the only thing he could hear in his ears. This must be a mistake. Emma wouldn't do that. I'll send you the address. Crystal Globe Club, Kyle added. A notification pops up on Aaron's phone. Location received. He didn't even realize he had grabbed his jacket. I'll be right there. The journey to Crystal Globe is a blur. Aaron doesn't remember the stoplights he went through, the turns he made, or even how fast he was going. Only Kyle's words and Paul's name echoed in his mind. Paul is supposed to be his friend. Their friend. Aaron pulled up outside the club, the glow of the neon lights reflecting off his windshield. The music inside was deafening, and he could feel the bass vibrating in his chest as he stepped through the entrance. Kyle was waiting just inside the door with a serious expression. He didn't say a word, just nodded toward the dance floor. And then Aaron saw her, Emma. She has her back to Jackson, the ex who dumped her in college before she met Aaron. Jackson's hands were on her waist, moving ever downward, their bodies pressed together, swaying to the music as if they'd done this a million times before. Then she turned, and Aaron saw it, their lips meeting, Jackson's hand clasping the back of her neck. She didn't resist. Around them, Paul and Linda are laughing and clapping as if this is some kind of show. Aaron and a few of Emma's other mutual friends were there, grinning and whispering to each other. Something inside Aaron broke down. He didn't even realize he had moved until he was standing in front of them. Emma turned to him, moving slowly, lazily, as if she had all the time in the world. Her eyes flashed with surprise, but it was fleeting. No guilt. She just smiled. Oh, Aaron. Aaron raised his hand, interrupting her before she could make any excuses. His voice was calm, restrained, overly restrained. No, you're not really sorry. So save it. You'll have plenty of time to regret it. The smile on Emma's face faltered, but Aaron wasn't done yet. His eyes turned to Paul and Linda. A few minutes ago, they were laughing and cheering for Emma as if this was some kind of show. Now, they don't look so pleasant. Aaron took a step toward them, his voice firm. I see the two of you clapping like it's a goddamn circus act while that man is kissing my soon-to-be ex-wife. From now on, you are my enemies. So you two better be careful. Paul's smile disappeared, and Linda avoided his gaze. Good. They should be upset. Then Aaron turned to Emma. How long has this been going on? She lowered her head and brushed her fingers over the straps of her dress. For a second, she looked almost ashamed. But then she replied softly, 3 months. I've been with him ever since he came back. Aaron exhaled slowly, his jaw tensing. For 3 months, she had been coming home, lying beside him, pretending knowing full well what she was doing behind his back. Then she lifted her chin and looked him straight in the eye, her expression hardening. I was going to tell you, I'm getting a divorce. Aaron sneered and shook his head. Don't bother. You'll get everything you deserve. Emma, I promise you. Emma's lips parted slightly, but Aaron wasn't finished. He took a step closer, his voice lowering. But listen up and listen well. You're not allowed to set foot in my house, whether it's to get your stuff, for closure, or for anything. If you do, you'll have more trouble to deal with. Jackson stood beside her, posture rigid, shoulders straight. He tried to act tough, but Aaron could see the hesitation in his stance. Are you threatening her? He asked, his voice firm. But there's a hint of uncertainty underneath. Aaron looked at him, stepped into his space, eyes locked on his. Yes, I am. I'm telling her to stay out of my house. Because if she does, I'll invoke residential defense against her. Jackson's expression flickered for a split second, from recognition to caution. He knew Aaron wasn't bluffing. He's not stupid enough to provoke further. The deafening music of the club faded into the background as silence spread between them. Aaron let his words sink in for a moment, then took a step back. Without another glance at Emma, Paul, or anyone who had ever claimed to be a friend, he turned and left. The cold night air met his face, but it didn't cool the anger boiling under his skin. Aaron took out his cell phone and dialed a number he knew by heart. The phone only rang once, and a low voice answered. Douglas Lima. Aaron took a deep breath and got into the car, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Doug, it's me, Aaron. I need your expertise. My wife, Emma, she wants a divorce, and I'm going to make sure she regrets ever wanting one. There was a slow laugh on the other end of the line. Well, you got the right guy. He's right. No one in town is more ruthless than he is. Douglas listened carefully as Aaron told him everything. He didn't interrupt, not once. When Aaron finished speaking, he let out a soft chuckle. You've thought this through. I like that. Aaron leaned back in his seat and gripped the steering wheel. The house is mine, bought before the wedding, so she can't touch it. My business, that's my father's. On paper, I'm just an employee, so it's beyond her as well. Doug grunted in approval. Smart. That leaves the joint account. Aaron smiled smugly. It's taken care of. Went to the bank before going home. Take it all out. You know she'll fight for alimony, right? She can fight as much as she wants. I'll give her the amount the judge ordered. No more, no less. But until then, she won't get a dime. Doug smiled again, this time with more joy. Damn it. Aaron, you're even more ruthless than I remembered. Aaron didn't answer. He is no longer the man who acts fairly. After hanging up the phone, Aaron came home. The house feels different now, like a battlefield just recovered. He stood in the doorway for a moment, then took out his cell phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in a long time. Jacob answered the phone on the second ring. Oh, if it isn't the old devil himself. Aaron sneered. Give you and your brothers a job. Can you get here in 30 minutes? A short pause was followed by a soft laugh. Sounds like fun. We'll leave right away. Exactly 29 minutes later, Jacob arrived with his team. A group of men who had served with Aaron in the Marines. Someone who knows how to be loyal, respectful, and, most importantly, vengeful. Jacob got off first and moved his knuckles. Well, what's the mission? Aaron points to the house. Everything that belongs to Emma. I want it packed up, thrown outside, out of my sight. But I want them to be taken special care of. Jose, always the first one to get it, grinned. You want us to leave a message? Aaron nods. Every piece of her clothing. I want to see your boot prints before you fold it. Jacob chuckled lowly. Damn, that's cold-blooded. I like it. They got to work immediately. The house was filled with the sounds of cabinets opening, drawers closing, and heavy boots stomping on fabric. The satisfaction of watching them work is something Aaron can't put into words. Jose picked up Emma's wedding dress and stretched it out between his fingers. This special treatment. Aaron crossed his arms. Yes, make sure it stinks. He grinned and took a big gulp of his tobacco juice before spitting a long, slow spit into the white fabric. Thick, dark stains spread across the lace like the last mark of shame. Then he unzipped his pants and grinned. Might as well add some extras. Aaron watched as he left his personal contribution, his urine soaking the expensive fabric. When he was done, he wrapped it up and tucked it to the bottom of the pile of clothes. Perfect, Aaron murmured, a smile slowly spreading across his face. Let it stink. There was a knock on the door. Aaron already knows who it is. He took a deep breath, then opened the door. Victoria stood there, Emma's mother. Victoria, her face lines deep with worry, and behind her, like two stray dogs sniffing around, stood Paul and Linda. Aaron interrupted them without even letting them walk up. He pointed to the boxes on the porch, neatly stacked but already beginning to show outdoor dirt. Grab those boxes for your bitch friend before you climb back into your car. If you don't take them, I'll let nature take care of them. Paul opened his mouth as if to say something, but Aaron just stared at him. He thought better of it and shut up. Linda grabbed his arm, and they both turned and moved the box in silence. Aaron sidles up to let Victoria in. She looked around at the house where her daughter had once lived, and now there was no trace of her. She sighed. her expression a mixture of sadness and other emotions. Regret? Disappointed? When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. Before I say anything, I just want to make it clear that what Emma is doing is wrong. There's no reason for that. No excuses. Aaron crosses his arms and waits. I'm not here to defend her, she continued, rubbing her hands together. I just came to say that she loves that man and she loves you. That's it. This is the moment when Aaron must interrupt her. He let out a short, humorless laugh. If she ever loved me, she wouldn't have gone back to the man who abandoned her. Victoria cringed at his words, but Aaron didn't stop. 5 years of marriage, and I realized I was nothing more than a placeholder. A convenient, stable option while she waits for her true love to knock on her door again. Now that her old love is back, I've outlived my usefulness. I should be discarded. Victoria sobbed, wiping the corners of her eyes with her sleeve. I know how you feel, Aaron, but I can't seem to make her understand. Aaron shook his head. There's no need for that. I don't want her back. She has made her decision. She wants to end the marriage? Good. I'll make sure she gets what she deserves. Her expression changed, just slightly. A touch of fear. You wouldn't hurt her, would you? Her voice was soft, hesitant. Aaron smiled, but there was no warmth in it. No, I wouldn't physically hurt her unless she tried to do something to me. She stayed away from me. I'm staying away from her. Victoria sighed in relief, relieved. But Aaron wasn't done. But the 5 years she wasted? Aaron leaned forward slightly. I will seek revenge, not only on her, but on the betrayers who once called themselves my friends. Her face sank. She averted her gaze and organized herself before saying softly, That's what I'm afraid of. Aaron softened slightly. He reached out to embrace her, feeling her fragile body shiver slightly in his arms. I'm sorry, he murmured, but your daughter will pay. As he pulled away, she wiped a tear from her eye. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. A small, broken smile. I can't change what she did, Aaron, but you'll always be like a son to me. For a moment, Aaron didn't know what to say. Then he nodded gently. Thanks. Victoria took a deep breath, straightened her posture, and walked toward the door. Then she walked out. Victoria sat in her living room, the dim glow of the table lamp casting long shadows on the wall. A cup of tea sat untouched on the small table next to her, long since turned cold. She had been thinking, replaying the conversation with Aaron over and over in her mind. Then the front door opened. Emma walked in confidently, her heels clicking confidently on the hardwood floor. Behind her, Jackson followed with a smug look on his face as if he had conquered the world. They seem like a couple of people who are completely unaffected by the mess they've created. Victoria lifted her tired eyes to the way they came in. She exhaled slowly, weighing her words. Dear daughter, she said, disappointment in her voice. I can't even put into words what you've done. Emma rolled her eyes and snapped, collapsing onto the couch and kicking off her heels. Oh, come on, Mom. He'll get over it. Aaron has always been the strong, silent type. He'll revitalize and move on. Victoria's gaze darkened. Keep going, she repeated, her voice quiet but sharp. Emma smiled smugly, leaning back and stretching her arms. I've spoken to a lawyer. We'll serve him with the paperwork next week. Jackson put his arm around Emma's shoulders and grinned. That's right. Emma gets the house and half his business. Victoria stayed still, watching them with an expression that was hard to decipher. Emma stroked her hair, clearly very pleased with herself. Zach and I are going to live in that house. We're going to make it our home. Jackson nodded eagerly. Once we get the business, we'll sell it. There's enough money for us to start over. We've talked about opening our own business, like we planned when we were in college. Emma turned to Jackson with dreamy eyes. It'll be perfect, baby. Victoria watched them silently for a long time. Then, suddenly, she smiled. It is not a laugh from amusement, nor is it a laugh filled with joy. It was something much colder and made Jackson's smug smile falter for a second. Victoria shook her head gently and looked them both in the eye. Best laid plans, O mice and men, she began, her voice slow and deliberate. Often it falls through, leaving only sadness and pain instead of the promised joy. Emma frowned. What? Victoria leaned forward slightly. Have you ever heard that poem by Robert Burns? Emma looked to Jackson, who shrugged. No. Victoria nodded knowingly. It's okay. You'll soon experience it for yourself. Then she walked out. 2 days later, Aaron was sitting in a car outside Emma's office. He sat in his car, parked a block away from Emma's office, sipping his coffee and watching the morning unfold. The sun had just risen, but the day had begun as he had planned. Aaron looked at his watch. It can happen anytime. In the office building, a man in a black suit walks through the glass doors to the front desk. Aaron knew him well. Philip, a document delivery man he'd hired. He is professional, efficient, and has a flair for the dramatic when needed. A few minutes later, Aaron saw him enter Emma's office. Aaron leaned back in his seat and let the moment sink in. He wasn't there to see the look on her face when she got the envelope, but he could vividly imagine it. That moment of confusion, followed by realization, followed by panic. He could almost hear her heart racing as she read the words on the petition. Grounds for divorce, adultery. Philip will politely smile at her, as he always does. Are you Mrs. Emma Peterson? She would nod, possibly distracted, possibly thinking it was just some routine. Then, with the same polite smile, he'd hand her that manila envelope. Have a nice day. Aaron grimaced to herself, imagining the silence in that office with everyone watching her. Small towns like ours don't let scandals slide. Now the whispers will spread like wildfire. There's more than just divorce papers in that envelope. There's evidence. Photographs taken at the club, clearly visible, show Emma and Jackson locked in each other's arms, lost in their own world. There is no room for denial, no room for excuses. Aaron tapped his fingers on the steering wheel and watched as she hurried to her boss's office. It is proceeding as planned. Brandon is an old friend and has known Emma almost as long as Aaron. But unlike Aaron, he's never fallen for her charms. He had warned Aaron to be careful with her, and Aaron ignored the warning at the time. You need a vacation? Brandon asked her, grinning as if he'd been waiting for this moment. She must have nodded, too shocked to speak. Okay, he said, still smiling. A few moments later, she left his office, her face pale and her pace unsteady. Aaron took his cell phone out of his pocket just as it started ringing. Brandon, he answered, already knowing what he would say. Done. She's on her way home. Aaron laughed and watched her figure retreat back into the parking lot. Please do as I suggest. Brandon smiled. I know, bro. Leave it to me. Aaron drove to a small cafe, one of those cozy little places with old wooden card tables and the aroma of fresh-baked treats wafting through the air. He needed something sweet to go with his win. Walking up to the counter, he ordered a donut and a cup of black coffee before taking a window seat and enjoying the calm buzz of the place. The world outside runs as if nothing has happened. People go on with their day, laughing, living their lives. But in another part of town, Emma's world is falling apart. Aaron took a slow bite of his donut, savoring the flavor, when his phone vibrated on the table. He glanced at the screen. Emma. Aaron sneered, just in time. Lifting the phone to his ear, he didn't even get a chance to say hello before her voice came through the phone. Sharp and angry. You asshole. You intend to destroy me. Aaron stirs his coffee with a spoon and is completely unaffected. Good morning, Emma. Cut the crap, Aaron. I just read the divorce papers. No mention of a house. No mention of business. Where's my half? Aaron took another sip of his coffee, letting the moment lengthen. Then, in the calmest of voices, he said, half of you flows away the moment you open your legs for a man other than your husband. Silence, just for a second. Then there was an angry gasp. You asshole. Aaron leaned back in his seat and looked out at a couple walking by hand in hand, laughing at something. What a simple and beautiful thing loyalty is. If you want anything, talk to your lover, he continued calmly. Maybe he can buy you that dream house you planned to steal from me. Her breath was coming in sharp now, anger almost radiating through the phone. Aaron decided to twist the knife a little more. Before you add anything else, let me remind you that there is a restraining order against you and your little boyfriend. Never go near my house or my business. He heard her inhale sharply and was probably preparing for another round of screaming, but he wasn't in the mood to listen. Snap, he ended the call, placing the phone on the table and taking another bite of his donut. Perfect timing. It still hasn't gotten cold. A deep sense of fulfillment enveloped Aaron the moment he hung up with Emma. A battle was won, but the war was not over. It's time for Paul and Linda to feel the weight of their betrayal. They must understand what the price of betrayal is. Aaron took another sip of his coffee, remembering the scene where Paul watched with a satisfied smile as Emma betrayed him that night at the club. That smug look is like telling Aaron, look, Your marriage is worthless. And Linda, who is supposed to be one of Emma's closest friends, chooses to clap her hands as if Aaron's suffering is an entertainment show. Let them get a taste of what it's like to lose everything they own, Aaron whispered to himself, setting his empty coffee cup on the table in satisfaction. His revenge has just begun. Before I dive into the story, let me formally introduce myself. My name is Aaron Peterson. I served 5 years in the Marines, did tours in Afghanistan, was stationed in Saudi Arabia for a while, and eventually retired. I returned home to run my father's business, a small but important IT company. We're not a big company, but in a town like ours, we don't need to be. We are the backbone of every business in the region. Data management, IT hardware, network support. If a business has computers, they need us. That means everyone, including Paul and Linda. Paul runs a manufacturing business. Linda has an accounting firm. The two of them were so quick to side with Emma and her asshole lover that night at the club. They're laughing and drinking like my marriage was just a joke. That night, they chose to take a stand. Now they will pay for it. Ironic, since both of their IT contracts expired 2 weeks ago. I knew this moment was coming, so I didn't bother renewing it. I let them think everything was fine. Let them continue to use our cloud services, our leased equipment, our support, never realizing that their entire infrastructure was on the line. And now that line is about to snap. I went back to my office and opened my laptop. I leaned back in my office chair, fingers crossed, and looked at the panel of client contracts open on my computer screen. Paul's has expired. Linda's has expired. Their businesses don't realize that their data on our servers could be wiped at any time and their systems could be shut down. They have no backups, no redundancy. If I flicked the switch, their businesses would be thrown back into the dark ages and forced to return to paperwork. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. It was time to get moving. I picked up the phone and dialed Mark, my account manager. He answered on the second ring. "Aaron, what's wrong?" he asked. "I have an assignment for you," I said, my tone calm. "I'm going to email Paul and Linda." Official notification. Their contract had expired, and they had 2 full days to back up their data. On the 3rd day, we remove everything and take back the equipment we rented. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, and then Mark let out a soft laugh. "Damn, you don't joke around anymore, do you?" I can hear him tapping away on the keyboard. "Okay, I'll draft something. Let's keep it professional, or do you want to twist the knife a little?" I sneer. "Professional, of course, but don't offer any contract renewals. Make them realize they're on their own now." Mark whistled. "Got it. They're going to panic when they realize they ignored all the renewal emails. Especially Linda, whose tax files for those high-end clients are on our servers." Aaron nodded to himself. "That's the purpose. They thought I was going to extend their contract because we were friends. That friendship died the moment they supported my cheating wife." Aaron remembered that Paul had known him for 15 years. They had attended the same university and later started a local business together. Paul was even best man at his wedding to Emma. And Linda, who had been one of Aaron's most trusted friends, helped him through the difficult times of his father's illness. These so-called friendships now seem like nothing more than cheap lies. Mark tapped on his keyboard and smiled. "You know what's funny? We've sent them multiple renewal reminders over the past few months. 7 times to be exact. I called Paul personally 3 times and was put off with 'too busy, talk later.' They either ignore the alerts or let them rot in the spam folder." Aaron sneered. "Yeah, they probably thought I would automatically renew their contract like I owed them something. They are so used to the kindness of others that they take it for granted." "Well, they're about to have a brutal awakening," Mark said, fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm drafting emails. Should I include a line about how many notices they ignored? Let them realize that this is entirely self-inflicted." Aaron nodded, even though Mark couldn't see him over the phone. "Sure. Let them understand that this is not a sudden decision. They had every opportunity, and they squandered it. It was made clear that we had made 7 attempts to contact them for a contract extension and had received no response." Mark grunted. "Do you think they'll come running to you begging, pleading for an extension, or try to capitalize on your past friendship?" Aaron sneered, imagining Paul and Linda panicking. "Oh, they will. When they do, I remind them exactly why they are in this mess. They supported the wrong people, and now they have to pay the price. Even past friendships can't save them?" Mark asked, a hint of curiosity in his tone. Aaron's voice turned cold. What friendship? True friends don't side with your enemies when you need support the most. That night at the club, when I saw them cheering for Emma and Jackson, any friendship was over. The morning of the third day arrived, just as Aaron had expected. He sat in his office, a countdown displayed on his laptop screen, 7 hours and 30 minutes. In half an hour, the plan he had arranged would begin to be carried out. He'd been preparing for this moment for so long that even his coffee tasted extra flavorful today. Yesterday afternoon, he sent Mark his final instructions: prepare the team to recover the equipment the next morning. Mark understands the intent behind this, and he's one of Aaron's few true friends. I'll lead it myself, Mark promised over the phone, and I'm going to see how fast those traitors' faces turn. As the clock pointed to 8 o'clock sharp, Aaron's cell phone kept vibrating and Paul's name lit up on the screen. He let it ring a couple times before answering, leaning back in his chair with a sneer. He had arranged everything a long time ago and was waiting for this moment to come. Last night, he personally oversaw the process of the IT team retrieving all the leased equipment. They showed up at Paul and Linda's office right on time, with no explanation, just the paperwork for the expired contract, and then began removing and loading all the computers, servers, and network equipment in one fell swoop. Their employees stood by, confused and horrified, wondering what was going on. The whole process was organized, cold and efficient, just as Aaron had planned. Mark was personally responsible for unplugging Paul's chief server, the machine that stored all his client data. He purposely waited until Paul's employees could see it, then took out a sticker with a big red "overdue" label, stuck it on the server, and unplugged the power cord in front of everyone. Company policy, he said calmly to the dazed employees in his office, is that your boss is 3 months behind on our contract renewals. When he picked up the phone, Paul's voice exploded over the speaker. Aaron, what the hell is going on? Why did your people take our computers? Where's our laptop? How do I access my data? You can't do that. We have an agreement. Aaron took the phone away from him and let him vent like a madman. He could almost picture him, blushing, pacing back and forth in his office, probably sweating. The man who 2 days ago was clapping and cheering at his wife and lover in the club is now paying the price for his stupid behavior. When he finally finished, I spoke, my voice steady and measured. What contract, Paul? I don't recall any signed agreement between us. What are you talking about? He spat. Our contract expired a couple weeks ago. There was no contract renewal. I'll let those words sink in and move on. Also, my team sent multiple reminders that you ignored. So for now, it's only fair that I ignore you. After that, I hung up. Within 5 minutes, my cell phone rang again. Linda, I sighed, already knowing how this would go. I answer, Aaron, do you really want to do this? She asked, panic in her voice. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I turned my attention to the monitor in front of me. Linda's data was neatly lined up on my system, waiting for a simple command. My fingers hover over the keyboard and hit enter. I watched as the papers began to disappear. Then I put the phone back, close to my ear. Just a moment, Linda, I said casually, enjoying the moment. I waited a few more seconds and watched the clearing complete. And then I said, well, I just did. The screaming that immediately followed almost made me laugh out loud. What did you do? She screamed. All the data is gone. My clients will kill me. I laughed, then explained to them that you neglected to renew your contract with your IT service provider. And he wiped all the data in a perfectly legal way. I paused, then added, have a good day, Linda. Then I hung up. Now that Paul and Linda have been dealt with, only Emma and her asshole lover Jackson remain. But I knew I had to be patient. My divorce has to be finalized first. The divorce hearing was set for a rainy Thursday. Aaron arrived an hour earlier than scheduled, looking like a regular office worker in his simple gray suit, exactly the image he wanted. His attorney, Douglas Lima, had long been waiting in front of the courthouse, holding a thick folder. Ready? Douglas asked, a winning gleam in his eye. Aaron nods. Let's get this show started. Emma and her lawyer were already waiting in their seats as they walked into the courtroom. Emma is wearing an expensive professional outfit with her hair perfectly coiffed in an attempt to convey the image of a successful career woman. When she saw Aaron, a flicker of contempt flashed in her eyes. Aaron ignored her gaze and sat quietly in his seat. Before court, Douglas whispered to Aaron, remember, act like a betrayed, average husband on a shoestring. Let the judge see that she's the greedy one. Emma tries to fight the terms of her divorce in court, and her lawyers make a feeble attempt to portray her as a woman with a successful career but bound by marriage. She claims she was entitled to the house and half of Aaron's family business. She wants everything she thinks she's entitled to. Unfortunately, she's got the wrong opponent. Aaron's lawyer is much more savvy than she expected. Your Honor, Douglas began, we want to establish that the property in question is not marital property. It was purchased by my client prior to his marriage and remains in his name. In fact, I have the original purchase contract in my possession, dated a full 2 years before the marriage was registered. Emma's lawyer, Harry, is on the edge of his seat. Emma clenched her jaw. The judge nodded and scrutinized the papers Douglas had handed over. Does counsel for the requesting party have any evidence to refute this? Harry sighed and rummaged through his papers, but obviously couldn't find anything useful. No, Your Honor. Emma's eyes narrowed, as if she was blaming the lawyer for her incompetence. Aaron kept a calm expression, but inside he was already smiling and counting the steps to victory, the first blow. Next, Emma and her lawyer try to claim that since Aaron owns a thriving IT business, she is entitled to half. That's the part Aaron is most looking forward to. Douglas stood up, straightened his suit, and turned to the judge with a confident smile. Your Honor, my client does not own any businesses. He's just a regular employee of his father's Peterson family IT company. Emma's face immediately changed. She obviously didn't see it coming. The judge looked at Aaron. Mr. Peterson, can you confirm your income? Aaron nodded, deliberately showing a hint of embarrassment. Yes, Your Honor. I make just over $1,000 a month. In fact, I'm just a regular clerk in the family business in charge of customer service. Emma's head snapped to Aaron, her eyes filled with disbelief. Her mouth dropped open in surprise. Aaron continued to maintain a slightly mortified expression, like a man forced to admit he wasn't successful. Your Honor, I would like to submit into evidence my client's pay stubs and tax returns for the past year. Douglas continued, handing over the neatly prepared documents. As you can see, his income is significantly lower than that of the requesting party. In fact, her annual income is more than 4 times his. Douglas made a point of emphasizing that last point so that everyone in the courtroom could hear it clearly. The judge scrutinized the documents, eyebrows raised slightly, clearly surprised by the income disparity. Then he looked at Emma. Ms. Peterson, based on this information, I see no reason for you to have any claim to his income or assets. In fact, the opposite seems to be true. Emma's lawyer looks completely lost. He hurried through the documents, trying to find any evidence that would refute it, but apparently coming up empty. Strike 2. Then comes the best part. Besides, Douglas added, his tone calm but powerful, flipping through another document. In view of the fact that my client's income is materially less than that of the petitioning party, and in view of the fact that she is the party who broke the marriage contract through infidelity, we request that spousal support be paid to my client. Douglas pulled out an envelope containing a picture of Emma and Jackson at the club. We have conclusive evidence that the breakdown of the marriage was caused solely by Ms. Peterson's infidelity behavior. Emma almost jumped out of her seat. What? It's impossible. Her voice trembled with anger. The judge banged his gavel. Silence in court. Emma's lawyer panicked. Your Honor, this is highly unusual. Usually. The judge interrupted him. I'm well aware of what's usually the case, Mr. Lawyer. But the law does not distinguish between the sexes, only between the facts. He turned to Emma, his eyes stern. Ms. Peterson, in light of the fact that your husband is the lower-income spouse and that the dissolution of this marriage was caused by your infidelity, I award Mr. Peterson spousal support in the amount of $500 per month for 2 years or until he remarries, whichever comes first. Emma's face went from shock to anger and then to despair. She clenched her fists, knuckles white. She looked like she wanted to scream, but under the majesty of the courtroom, she had to remain silent. Strike 3 out. Aaron kept the surface calm, but inside he was already cheering. This was the result of his plan, a perfect revenge. He glanced quietly at Douglas, who gave him a barely perceptible nod. They made it. As we left the courtroom, Emma rushed at me, anger burning in her eyes. You designed it all. You manipulate everything. I shrugged. No, Emma. I just let the truth play out. She gritted her teeth. You think you won. I laughed softly. Oh, I know I won. Then I walk away, already planning my next move. I know one thing for sure. I'm going to enjoy these 2 years. 3 months later, the divorce decree came down. I'm legally free. Now comes the final step. When I left the courthouse, I called Brandon, Emma's boss. He replied with a smile. I guess it's about time, he said. I smiled and said, yes, free at last. So tonight you're buying drinks. I smiled and said, no, I need a small dinner with Mr. Logan Peterson. He laughed and said, your uncle is a judge. Damn, man, you knew from the start that Emma was going to get screwed. Do you know who her lawyer is? Brandon asked. Who? It's Harry. You mean old Harry? Brandon asked. That's right, I said. I totally screwed her over. Old Harry was my uncle on my mother's side. Small town, you know. I'll buy drinks tomorrow night, I promise, I said. I'm just preparing the file for Emma. She has to move out by tomorrow night. As for Jackson, I've spoken to Mr. Patel and explained everything to him. When he heard his employee was cheating on him with a married woman, the guy was so pissed off his ears were smoking. By this evening, he will be dismissed with no references. Then I thanked Brandon and hung up. A week has passed. On a quiet Wednesday night, I heard a knock on the door. When I opened the door, Victoria stood there with an inscrutable expression. Hey, Aaron, she whispered. Hey, Victoria, come on in. I led her into the sitting room. She sat down on the couch and smoothed her skirt, then looked up at me with a small smile. I'm not sure how to put this, but Emma's a mess. I sat across from her and leaned back in my chair. Yeah, I said, the corners of my mouth turning up in a sneer. Victoria nodded. She's planning to leave town. I let out a soft laugh. Well, that's not surprising. She burned all the bridges with everyone in town. Victoria cocked her head and smiled. No, Aaron, she didn't just burn the bridge. She crossed the wrong one. I met her gaze, and for the first time, I felt a real sense of fulfillment. I exhaled slowly. I don't apologize for what I did. Victoria shook her head. You don't need to. She deserved it. She took you for granted and ruined your marriage. I nodded. She does. Victoria leaned forward slightly and lowered her voice. Paul and Linda are getting a divorce. It makes me raise my eyebrows. Really? She nodded. They blame each other for all this mess. Their business is in ruins. Customers have sued them for millions. I let out a low whistle. Millions that they don't have. Victoria sneered. Exactly. I leaned back and crossed my arms. They deserve it. She hesitated before speaking again. And Jackson? I cocked my head. What happened to him? Victoria sighed. He's left town. I'm not surprised. That coward had to run away after all. 2 days ago, he and Emma had a big fight. Things got ugly. I stared at her, waiting for her to continue. He even slapped her. But I didn't react or intervene. I just stood there, silent, watching them. The only thing that comes to mind is that comparison, a woman who was once pampered by someone who truly loved her and is now being abused by the man she threw everything away for. I exhale slowly. Well, that's what happens when she makes a choice. Victoria sized me up for a moment, then stood up. It's time for me to go home. I stood up too. Good luck, Victoria. She gave me one last smile. Bye, Aaron. With that, she walked out the door. Life has a funny way of balancing everything out. After everything that happened, I found myself with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I don't have baggage that drags me down. No toxic characters that suck me dry. My house is quiet, but not the lonely kind. It was calming, and I finally had time to focus on the things I really love. One of those things was getting myself a couple German shepherds. I always wanted a dog, but Emma never liked the idea. But then I realized that I can't have a dog because my wife is a bitch. Well, Emma's not here anymore, so I can do whatever I want. I bought 2 puppies, a male and a female, from a breeder a couple towns away. I named them Titan and Luna. Titan is brave and protective, always ready for action. Luna is the smart one, observing everything before acting. They became my shadows, following me everywhere, sleeping at the foot of my bed, making sure I was never really alone when I had them with me. My morning runs feel better. My house is much more vibrant. As for my moods, well, they make me laugh more than I have in years. And then there's Emily. I met her at the dog park. Well, actually Titan and Luna met her first. She sits on a bench, sipping her coffee, while her own German shepherd, Rex, tries to wrestle with a branch twice his size. My 2 ran straight towards him, and before I could call them off, they were in a full-blown game of tug-of-war. Emily laughed, shaking her head. It looks like we have a small team. I sneer. It seems so. Sorry if they bother him. She waved her hand. Are you kidding me? It was the most fun he had all week. We ended up talking for over an hour, watching our dogs play. She has a warm, easy presence, is smart, funny, and confident. Very different from the chaos I had previously dwelled on. No games, no manipulation, just good conversation and genuine smiles. Meeting her is not like being struck by lightning. It's simpler than that. Like finding a piece of the puzzle that I didn't even realize was missing. One conversation turned into two, then a few texts, then a couple coffee dates. Before I knew it, Emily and Rex were regulars in my life. We'd take the dogs on hikes, spend lazy Sundays watching movies, and make dinner together while the three shepherds wandered around the kitchen waiting for food scraps. It's not hasty. It's not forced. Just great. 2 months later, rumors began to spread around town. Emma and Jackson's relationship is fractured. They were seen having a heated argument at the supermarket, with Jackson shouting at Emma, blaming her for costing him his job. Another rumor says Jackson started drinking and even shoved Emma in public at a bar once. And the latest news is that Jackson has moved out of Victoria's house and back to his original city. Aaron wasn't surprised when these news reached him. Betrayers always betray each other. That's what he's always believed. When Aaron goes to the bank to deposit a check, he meets Linda's husband, Mike. The once spirited man now looked haggard. Aaron, Mike greeted hesitantly. It's been a while. Aaron nodded politely without responding more. Mike cleared his throat, visibly disturbed. I heard that Linda and Paul. His voice faded. Aaron looked at him and waited. It's been a while, Mike finally said, humiliation and anger in his eyes. That night at the club, they weren't just supporting Emma and Jackson. Aaron suddenly understood. Linda and Paul also cheated on their respective spouses. This explains why they side with Emma, like attracts like. I'm sorry, Aaron said sincerely. Mike laughed bitterly. I filed for divorce. I wish I could make her pay like you did, but I don't have that kind of power. Aaron tapped Mike on the shoulder. Sometimes the best revenge is to live your life. As Aaron left the bank, he felt a strange sense of calm. Life has its own way of delivering justice. Emma loses her lover. Paul and Linda's secret is revealed, and he, Aaron, is truly free. That evening, Aaron was playing in the backyard with his 2 German shepherds, Titan and Luna. He adopted them 6 months ago. Emma never liked dogs, but he always wanted one. Now, these 2 lively animals have become an integral part of his life. The doorbell rang. Aaron told the dogs to stay in the yard and walked to the door. Standing there was Emily, a female vet he'd met at the vet clinic. She brought her German shepherd, Rex, in for a routine checkup, and they got to talking and realized they had a lot in common. Ready to go hiking? Emily asked with a smile, her sheepdog Rex wagging his tail excitedly. Aaron nodded, feeling a sense of relief and anticipation he hadn't experienced in a long time. Sure, let me call Titan and Luna. They drove to the nearby mountains with 3 dogs running happily ahead of them. The sunlight dappled through the leaves on the trail, and the air was fresh and sweet. You know, Emily said as they climbed halfway up the mountain, when I first met you, you always seemed preoccupied. But now you're different. Aaron pondered her words. Yes, he did change. Not just because of the success of his revenge, but because he learned to let go and start over. Life goes on, he says simply. And sometimes bad things happen to make room for better things. Emily smiled and shook his hand. Well, I'm happy to be part of that something better. They stood on top of the hill and watched the entire town unfold at their feet. Aaron remembers everything about the last few months, the betrayal, the pain, the revenge, and the rebirth. He is no longer the betrayed husband, nor is he driven by anger and a desire for revenge. He is now stronger, wiser, and more peaceful. The sun began to sink in the west, coloring the sky a golden red. 3 German shepherds surrounded their feet, tired but content. Emily leaned on Aaron's shoulder as they took in the beautiful view together. That's life, Aaron thought. Lose something, gain something. End one journey and begin another. And sometimes the end is the real beginning. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.